Namaste. So in the last episode, Samvarta delivered a speech to Paraśurāma, and he was speaking on the Ajata platform, the highest level of self-realization, the end of the path, the goal, pure self-realization. And Paraśurāma, he was a product of Brahminical culture. So he was actually trained in the Dvaita-vāda, which is the lowest level of dualistic religion. So naturally, well, let's read his reaction here. Hearing the words of the sage, Paraśurāma's speech, intellect, and valor were stupefied. He was stupefied, made stupid by this speech. Why? Because it was from a platform, a higher platform, which was completely beyond his experience. His knowledge was inadequate to grasp what I'm thinking about Angiras. You'll hear why in a minute. What Samvarta was telling him, because Samvarta was a sage, he was fully realized. So even his valor, even his strength was stupefied. He couldn't do anything. And we see this again and again, that so-called intelligent people will come and maybe hear a video, listen to one of our talks or something like that, and they just become like, duh. They can't say anything. Why? Because we are speaking from a higher platform, something they have not realized or maybe not even encountered before. So what did Paraśurāma do? He's very intelligent. Then with shyness, he addressed the yogi with prayer and prostration. You see, people are stupid nowadays. They don't do this anymore. You know, I have a gardener who comes, and actually I don't have, but the house owner has. And she's not the brightest light in the chandelier, you know what I mean? But anyway, she doesn't even offer pranams to a sannyasi. Well, this is very, problematic. Not for me, but for her. And also people walking down the street or whatever who run into me are often very disrespectful or neglectful. It's like whenever I see a sannyasi, I always salute them, at least with pranams, if not actual obeisances. When I'm in the presence of my guru, of course, I offer obeisances. That's the way I was trained. But people nowadays want everything cheaply. And they don't want to offer any respect, what to speak of submission to a realized person. So they don't get the teaching. It goes right over their heads. But Paraśurāma, he knows the way. So he offers prostration and speaks very shyly to the realized sage. Oh, great person, I do not know the answer to that. Indeed, teach me by taking me as your disciple, free from sin. Here in India, there's a kind of a macho culture. And the three things that you can never get an Indian man to say is, I don't know, I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Those words don't exist. A doctor friend of mine was telling me, it happens to him all the time. He'll give instructions how to take medicine take this pill 3 times a day, take this pill with meals or whatever, And you say, did you understand? And they go, oh, yeah. And then he says, okay, you tell me. And they get it all mixed up and backwards. Nobody can admit that they don't know. Now, that's really self-sabotaging, because the first step of learning anything is admitting, at least to yourself, that you don't know. So if you can't admit that you don't know, how can you ever come to know? You see? So pride, ego, vanity, macho spirit, or whatever you want to call it, gets in the way of learning. It results in offenses to the learned people. And one who has offenses then has karma that they have to work off. Maybe they have to take another birth in a hellish situation or something like that. I mean, it's really serious stuff. So if you approach a learned person, you should do so with humility. And then you can get the advantage of that association. So, after Paraśurāma, the sage with compassion started to narrate his story very sweetly. O Bhargava, I belong to Angiras lineage. Now, who is Angiras? He is one of the fire gods. He is one of the stars in what we call the Big Dipper, but in Vedas is called the 7 sages. So Angiras also is one of the authors of the Rig Veda. If you've ever read the Rig Veda, it's extremely profound. So Angiras is one of the great Vedic sages. And his lineage is also very illustrious. So Samvarta appeared in that lineage. Well, let's read some more. I am the disciple of my brother. We don't know who his brother is. With great qualities, I am well known in the 3 worlds as Samvarta. Now, as we told before, Samvarta is the name of a cloud, and not just any cloud. The Samvartaka cloud is a type of cloud that comes at the time of universal devastation. And it downpours solid sheets of rain, solid columns of rain that's described as the size of an elephant's leg. Not just drops, but solid columns of water coming down. So the Samvartaka is a cloud that pours mercy. And in this case, Samvartaka is giving mercy to Paraśurāma, just pouring it on. So, I will tell you about me. Listen with attention. Some time ago, I developed enmity with my brother, who was my preceptor. Thereby, I became disgusted and attained this condition indeed. So, why is that? Well, we can read in the Bhagavatam, in the story of Krishna, that Krishna approached the sages who were performing the Agni Rasa sacrifice, which was started by Angira. Angira made this sacrifice. He gave the formulas for it in the Rig Veda. And so this sacrifice gives you promotion to heaven, to heavenly planets. It doesn't give self-realization, though. So the sages would not give Krishna any prasadam from the sacrifice. They were saying, no, it's only for those who perform the sacrifice. So we could see they're actually very selfish. And their selfishness, their self-centeredness resulted in their making a great offense to Krishna. So in this way, we can see that the people who follow the ritualistic path of the Vedas are actually on a lower level. This is the Dvaita-vāda, the ritualistic path of rules and regulations. And often it can appear, very fancy, big temples, really complicated sacrifices with amazing hymns and rituals and stuff like this. But actually, those performers are attached. They're attached to the ego of being a brahmana or a priest. And because of that, they don't even develop bhakti. If you go to one of these sacrifices here in India, you'll hear them chanting the Vedic hymns like it's some kind of a business deal. Like they're just rushing to get through it. And they use a very kind of nasal, sharp voice, like a woman when she's angry at you. So they don't really have bhakti. You listen to our recordings of the Siddha Lakshmi Stotram, Homa, and you can see the difference. So anyway, I can imagine that he would have quarreled with his brother over this. Because if the brother was following strictly the Angirasa tradition, then he would be a ritualistic brahmana, not a realized brahmana. But Samvarta is realized. So later, I was suitably instructed by the Guru Dattatreya. Now, Dattatreya is another incarnation of God who appears just to show mercy to the fools of Kali Yuga. So he comes as a wandering mystic, a sage, a naked sage wandering in the forest. And he's surrounded by all kinds of foolish people and dogs and like that. But if a person of intelligence meets him, then he begins to speak very wonderfully. So Samvarta found Dattatreya, and so he became an avaduta like him. Understanding that everything is self-consciousness, and all this is its sport, I am treading the path of fearlessness, free from flashes of doubts and bound firmly as a puppet to the string. This is a wonderful statement. I can only compare it to some of the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, who is also an avaduta. That the self is everything. And when one realizes the self, one realizes one's connection with everything. That there is oneness underlying all the diverse of manifestations in the creation. This is self-realization. This is advaita, non-difference, non-duality. And so Samvarta has this realization, which is way beyond where Paraśurāma is at. And he finally, so he's bound firmly as a puppet on a string. What does that mean? Ramana describes that for the realized sage, he simply follows his destiny. He simply goes along with the force of his karma, prarabdha karma, the ripened karma to be discharged in this lifetime. He doesn't feel that he has any other agenda than the will of God guiding him. He does everything spontaneously. He doesn't plan, he doesn't think even. So when people would ask Ramana Maharshi a question, he would remain silent for some time. And then if he was guided to speak, he would speak. And he spoke wonderfully. He spoke marvelously. You should read the Conversations book, Conversations with Ramana Maharshi. It's a wonderful book. That's how I got into his teaching. I always pick the thickest, biggest book because it contains the most nectar. So in this way, Samvarta tells his whole story, and he explains his platform, his position, his consciousness, his realization. And Paraśurāma realizes that he's really out of his depth. And then we'll hear his response in the next episode. Aung Tat Sat, Aung Harihi Aung.